Tonight on Bridge City News, a scam called Gifting Circle has made its way to our region. We will explain what it is and how you can protect yourself from being scammed. Calgary Tory MP Michelle Rempel explains why she is dead set against the Liberals' gun control bill C-71. And Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, welcomed a new baby boy. We hear from the Prince himself with all of the details.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Good evening, thanks so much for joining us. A Coaldale man is facing charges in an alleged pyramid type of scheme that extended into British Columbia and Saskatchewan and generated a $2 million loss. Police say the Gifting Circle scam promised a return of $40,000 in exchange of a so-called gift for $5,000. The donor must then recruit more people to give money, but investigators say the end result is lost money when new recruits cannot be found. Witnesses say there are currently more than 500 members in 80 gifting circles. Lethbridge police say the scam works well because it targets people you know.
They might not know. They're obviously told that this is for helping other people. They may not know that this is a crime. Any proceeds that they were to accept, such as a gift of $40,000, is a crime. It's a proceed of crime. And the way this scheme works, for every one person that gets paid, 7 other people or 8 other people are then victimized. So they're unaware. They're told that this is something that's beneficial for all of them, and each family that is affected could experience some financial hardship. So I know that some people scrounge together life savings so that they can put in this for this opportunity, and that really affects them in the long run when at the end of all this they're going to lose that $5,000.
Steele Cameron Tallman will appear in court tomorrow on charges of fraud over $5,000 and possession of the proceeds of crime. On May 1st, employees from Switzer Automotive were attacked and beaten outside of the shop. Mark Switzer has owned the business for more than 36 years. He says he has not seen much need for a security system until now.
The place where it occurred was on the front of the building, and that's the only area on the entire property we don't have cameras. But lots of witnesses, though, lots of City of Lethbridge employees and people driving by, and 2 of my staff, so it wasn't hard to understand what happened. All that security provides you is the ability to see who creates the problem, right? It doesn't solve the problem and it doesn't mitigate it. But we need to be able to understand, who the individual is that's doing the damage and causing all the problems around here. And it's been more of a benefit for the police, I think, effectively than for us, because then they know who the individuals are, and often they already know who they are, and once they have video, then of course then they can take action.
23-year-old Ryan Vale was arrested on Wednesday. He faces various charges, including assault causing bodily harm. RCMP and Coaldale have charged 2 men in connection with graffiti. Police received reports of spray-painted graffiti last week at the Coaldale Arena, the Senior Centre, St. Joseph's School, and the Mennonite Church. Matthew Dubois Parkins and Keegan Anderson, both from Coaldale, have been charged with 5 counts of mischief. Both men are scheduled to appear in court on June the 12th. 2 bodies believed to be those of a mother and toddler missing since April 16th have now been found west of Calgary. Police say the bodies were found earlier today. The disappearance of Jasmine Lovett and her 22-month-old daughter, Alia Anderson, were treated as a homicide. The investigation led officers to a heavily wooded area near Grizzly Creek area, just off of Highway 40, where the bodies were discovered. Police say a suspect has been taken into custody and charges are pending. No more mountain scenes, burly men, or pretty pastel colors will be seen on cigarette packages. That's thanks to a new federal law that recently went into effect requiring cigarette and tobacco products be placed in plain brown packaging void of any brand logos. This law will allow Canada to have some of the toughest rules in the world for tobacco companies. And this is a huge win according to the Canadian Cancer Society.
It's a historic day when the health minister announced the final regulations. It's been a long time coming. And from a public health perspective, we're absolutely delighted. This is a measure that's going to protect kids from the marketing of tobacco companies. It's going to reduce tobacco use, and ultimately it's going to save lives. And Canada will be the 14th country to require this. Australia was first. Well, in Australia, smoking has gone down. The Australian Department of Health did a post-implementation review and found that plain packaging was one of the factors that contributed to the reduction in smoking. There's other factors as well, such as higher tobacco taxes. And there are dozens and dozens of studies in Canada and worldwide providing evidence that this would be an effective measure. There's going to be a transition period. Tobacco companies will have the manufacturer level until November 9th, 2019 to implement these changes, and then all retail stores as of February 7th, 2020.
45,000 Canadians died from smoking-related illnesses last year. The new Cor Van Ray YMCA opened over the weekend to much fanfare. The project, which began in 2011, makes the Lethbridge YMCA the third largest in North America. Families now have access to the pool, fitness center, gymnasiums, and childcare centers. The official grand opening of the Cor Van Ray YMCA will be announced soon, but all of the facilities are now open. Meanwhile, the old YMCA building in the downtown location at 514 Stafford Drive sits empty since the City of Lethbridge took back the keys on April 23rd. But what's in future for the building? We spoke with the city to see what their plan is.
It was an old building. It was built in the 60s for a recreation facility for a pool and a gymnasium and a couple of courts. And it wasn't designed to be anything but a YMCA. So it wasn't designed to be any other kind of facility for any other purposes. We've had hazardous materials inspection done on the facility. And we're just having a look at the building for condition and doing an analysis, and I'm going to present that to council. Once it's in front of council for decision, then it's up to council to make that decision. And once the decision's made, then we have to make plans after that. So.
Westerson says that because the building was built back in the 1960s, it does not follow any of the current building codes. It therefore most likely will be completely demolished before any new plans can be drawn up. Moms do not always get the recognition they deserve, but one mother in Lethbridge has been racking up the accolades, racking and re-racking, in fact, as she broke 3 records for powerlifting. BCN's Loris Alexander has her story.
Amanda Riddell did not discover the magnitude of her strength until 4 years ago. Maybe it was the years spent carrying her 3 children, or maybe the power is genetic. But this Lethbridge mom has transformed into a record-setting powerlifter.
I've always struggled with poor self-image and body image. So I decided to join Anytime back in 2015 and was like, I'm gonna dab in some figure competitions. So I did that, and I reached out to Shane and CJ in December of 2015 and said, I need some help.
Not only did Riddell struggle with her weight, but being a stay-at-home mom for 12 years made it difficult for her to get out of the house and into the gym.
I started off with a stay-at-home mom coming in, just trying to get in shape, all the way to, she's turned into this incredible athlete that's breaking records in multiple divisions. So it's a huge transformation she's took.
Riddell broke 3 Canadian national records: the squat record at 330 pounds, the bench record at 237 pounds, and the deadlift record at 435 pounds. Riddell is still stunned by her own accomplishments.
I was extremely happy just getting to the point and competing and completing the lift. So the records were a total bonus. And I'm still kind of in shock that they actually happened, that I actually did that. My goal was just to outbeat what I did in November, and I surpassed that.
Her even helping people in the gym. You can see her when she approaches the bar to perform her lifts. There's a whole different person coming out inside. And just watching her transform and her being able to tell her story, I know she's like motivation to a lot of people in her gym, more than you should even know. So,
for moms out there, Riddell says the sky's the limit. For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
An Alberta historian who has written more than 20 books will be receiving an honorary degree at the University of Lethbridge. Hugh Dempsey, who penned many works on the history of First Nations people, will receive the honor May 30th at the spring convocation ceremony. U of L Chancellor Charles Weaselhead said in a release that Dempsey played an important role in the history of the Blackfoot people, helping to preserve a proud culture for future generations. Still an active writer, Dempsey contributes to the Alberta Historical Review and lends his expertise to the various collections housed at the Glenbow Museum. Several cities in Alberta are great real estate opportunities for potential buyers. At the top of the list is Lethbridge. Now that's according to a recent report from the Canadian Real Estate Association. We spoke with a local realtor to explain what makes the Bridge City such a hot buy.
We've got a really stable economy here in Lethbridge. So we have the university, the college, the city is one of the largest employers in this part of the country, as well as the Chinook Health region. So we've had stable employment, lots of growth over the past few years. And with some of the mortgage changes that have happened over the last, I would say 2.5 years, we've also seen Some changes that have affected affordability a little bit and brought prices down to maybe a more accessible level, but with some of the lowest prices in the province, we don't have the accessibility that some other cities do.
Atkinson says houses in the $250,000 to $300,000 price range are now the most popular. It looks like a ghost town. What you are looking at is the New Horizon Mall in Calgary, and it's hard to believe that it is open for business. Even more astonishing is that space in the mall is nearly sold out. General Manager of the New Horizon Mall explains the unique model of this soon-to-be buzzing attraction.
Well, a traditional mall would be developed by a developer, whereas all the units would be owned by the developer. In this case, the developer has built the mall and condoed the units. So anybody out there that wants to become an investor or let's say an owner-operator could buy a single unit or a double unit and operate their business from those units. So really they become their own landlord. So it's a little bit of an unconventional model, but it's a very unique model that I think people are beginning to understand and see the value in.
The mall was built by the same developer of the Pacific Mall in Markham, Ontario. The space is sold out immediately, but took 2 years for the mall to reach full occupancy. Alberta's opposition leader told the Alberta Federation of Labour that new Premier Jason Kenney is not interested in standing up for working people. Rachel Notley blasted Kenney on ideas such as clawing back overtime pay that will cost workers thousands of dollars. The UCP responded that Calgary and Edmonton have the second and third highest unemployment rates in Canada. Kenney said Albertans gave his party a resounding endorsement to its plan to reignite the economy and to get Albertans working once again. How difficult is it being a Christian politician? Some say you simply cannot do both. Jeremy Wong is a former pastor and he ran as a UCP candidate in Calgary. Wong talks about the best approach to take when sharing political views as a believer.
I believe we need to use wisdom in what we share. We need to be respectful, and we can be vocal, but realize that there's a plurality of views, and we can share in a way that creates dialogue and creates a conversation rather than division, because I think that there's more things that we could actually agree upon than disagree.
Watch the full interview with Mr. Wong discussing faith and politics coming up in the second half of our show. The federal Conservatives have been fighting Bill C-71 for the past 6 months now. It's a bill they say will penalize responsible gun owners. Now, one of those who's been quite vocal against the Liberals' new gun bill is Calgary Tory MP Michelle Rempel. She says the new bill does nothing to go after illegal gun crimes in our country.
Bill C-71, the provisions in there do nothing to get the firearms out of the hands of gang leaders. We know that we need to put more resources into preventing gang violence, and we need to make sure that the RCMP have tools to do their jobs. This is why we've also been fighting the Liberals' Omnibus Justice Bill, which included watering down provisions for things like terrorism and gang violence. So I expect this to be an issue in the upcoming campaign. We are united in preventing firearms violence in Canada, but we are strongly behind the rights of law-abiding firearms owners because we know that we need to be targeting the people who are illegally bringing handguns and other firearms into this country to commit those crimes.
A petition against Bill C-71 has so far gathered more than 25,000 signatures. Regina's police chief says a man died in an officer-involved shooting over the weekend. Evan Bray says officers were called to an apartment on Saturday and discovered a man with a knife who was holding a woman hostage. Bray says police tried to de-escalate the situation, but an officer fired a gun out of fear somebody was going to get seriously hurt.
So we're limited in what we can say. However, I can confirm one of the officers present discharged the police firearm, and the male subject was pronounced deceased by EMS. I also want to tell you this. Situations like this are not frequent in nature. In fact, in the past 10 years, there have been 4 non-fatal police officer-involved shootings in Regina. This is the second fatal officer-involved shooting in 20 years. There was a lot of de-escalation techniques used to try and de-escalate the situation. These situations are very fluid, they're very dynamic, things happen very rapidly. Having said that, there was a significant period of time between when we arrived on scene and when the incident was resolved with a firearm.
Ottawa is giving $2.5 million to support flood recovery efforts across central and eastern Canada. Public Safety Minister Ralph Goodale says the grant will support emergency services in affected communities.
Federal funding to the Red Cross will primarily support emergency services. That would include services to people displaced by the floods, including temporary lodging, clothing, food, and other essential supplies. Providing help when an emergency begins rescuing people and trying to save their property is first and foremost. But once the peak passes, there is also a long and challenging return, cleanup, restoration, and recovery process before things can get back to normal.
U.S. President Donald Trump's ex-lawyer Michael Cohen left his home in Manhattan, New York to begin serving a 3-year prison sentence. The time to be served is for crimes committed, including campaign finance violations related to hush money payments made on Trump's behalf.
That the country will be in a place without xenophobia, injustice, and lies at the helm of our country. There still remains much to be told, and I look forward to the day that I can share the truth.
Russian authorities now say 41 people died after a Russian plane made an emergency landing shortly after takeoff at an airport in Moscow. Survivors say the plane was struck by lightning, but Russian officials say the plane returned due to technical reasons. 2 children were among the dead. The jet had a total of 73 passengers and 5 crew members. The aircraft landed with full fuel tanks because their crew lost contact with air traffic controllers and decided it was too dangerous to dump fuel over Moscow. A ceasefire has been announced between Israel and the Hamas militant group following the deadliest fighting in Gaza since the 2014 war. Reports say more than 23 people have died on the Gaza side and 4 civilians died on the Israeli side after hundreds of rockets made their way to both regions on Sunday. The Islamic Jihad militant group, which Israel accused of instigating the latest violence, confirmed the truce has been brokered by Egypt. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the campaign is not over. Israel and Hamas are bitter enemies and have fought 3 wars and many smaller battles since the Islamic militant group seized control of Gaza in 2007. World Vision is warning that millions of children are at risk from Cyclone Fani, which slammed into India's eastern coastline. The storm brought heavy rain and winds up to 200 kilometers an hour. As we hear in this next report, government agencies are preparing to mobilize within a moment's notice.
World Vision is ready to provide emergency humanitarian assistance in Bangladesh and India as Cyclone Fani threatens millions of families. Major coastal cities and communities are among those in the path of the storm, which is currently intensifying. Franklin Jones is Interim Head of Humanitarian and Emergency Affairs at World Vision India.
The immediate needs, what we foresee would be the food as soon as they come from the camps, which most likely will be in 2 or 3 days. The needs the food needs for the families, and also the other needs in terms of water and sanitation facilities, and the hygiene kits. Moreover, on top of this, because we also focus working with the children in the community will be impacted by the cyclone.
Meanwhile, World Vision Bangladesh National Director Fred Witteveen explains the kind of devastation the cyclone could cause there.
We expect damage to households, water sanitation facilities. Water will become polluted, so health will be a major concern. Food loss, water loss will all be major concerns for us. And of course, when you have significant flooding, making sure that children are accounted for and that they get the help that they need.
Witteveen says their greatest concern is for the vulnerability of the world's largest refugee camp known as Cox's Bazar, home to over 900,000 Rohingya refugees.
Cox's Bazar is does not have the same level of protection. So World Vision has been working with families to help them understand the disaster management warning system, because they have very flimsy homes, basically plastic shelters, so making sure they're tied down as well as possible.
Peter Wooding reporting for the Global News Alliance.
It was on this day that the airship Hindenburg exploded and crashed. Psychologist Sigmund Freud was born, and Roger Bannister became the first athlete to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. This is Today in History for May the 6th.
May 6, 1937. In Lakehurst, New Jersey, the German dirigible Hindenburg bursts into flames and crashes upon arriving for landing. Reporter Herb Morrison is there.
It's a terrific crash, ladies and gentlemen. The smoke and the flames now, and the frame is crashing to the ground, not quite to the mooring mast. All the humanity and all the passengers.
The disaster kills 35 people aboard the hydrogen-filled airship and a Navy crewman on the ground. 1856. Psychologist Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, is born in what's now the Czech Republic. 1915.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what you'll think about Mr. Kane. I can't imagine. You see, I play the part myself.
Actor and director Orson Welles, whose pioneering films include Citizen Kane and Touch of Evil, is born in Kenosha, Wisconsin. 1942. During World War II, Americans and Filipinos surrendered to Japanese forces on the Philippine island of Corregidor in the Pacific. And 1954. In Britain, Roger Bannister becomes the first athlete to run a mile in fewer than 4 minutes. Bannister finishes the mile in 3 minutes 59.4 seconds at a track meet at Oxford. Today in history, May 6th. Sandy Kozel, The Associated Press.
Prince Harry and his wife Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, are the proud parents of a baby boy. The baby, who does not yet have a name, weighed 7 pounds 3 ounces and is the 7th in line for the British throne. He is also Queen Elizabeth's 8th great-grandchild. Prince Harry was a proud new papa.
Mother and baby are doing incredibly well. It's been the most amazing experience I could ever possibly imagine. How any woman does what they do is beyond comprehension, but we're both absolutely thrilled and so grateful to all the love and support for everybody out there, from everybody out there. It's been amazing. So we just wanted to share this with everybody.
Congratulations going out to the royal family. Some sunshine mixed with cloud, but nice and mild today. Beautiful weather's in the forecast for the entire week. Complete weather details are coming up. We had sun mixed with cloud today and fairly warm. Tonight, just a few clouds developing with a low near 3 degrees. Tomorrow, mainly cloudy with a high near 14. Wednesday, lots of sunshine and a high near 17. Thursday, a few clouds developing with a high near 15. Back to 17 and sunny on Friday. Saturday, mainly sunny and 22. Sunday, just a few clouds developing and a high near 18. Looking at the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 17 and an average low of 3. The highest temperature in this state was recorded in 1992 at 31 degrees, and a record low was -5 in 1977. Sunrise was at 6:01, sunset at 8:55. Let's see how tomorrow is shaping up across the country. Victoria will be mainly sunny and 20, sunshine and 19 for Vancouver on Tuesday. A mixture of sun and cloud and 12 degrees for Calgary. A slight chance of showers and 13 for Edmonton tomorrow. Rain and 15 is on tap for Regina, showers and 13 for Saskatoon. Mainly sunny and 13 as well for Winnipeg. Showers and 14 in Toronto tomorrow. Ottawa will have light rain and 15. Montreal will also have showers and 15. Over the Maritimes, Fredericton, New Brunswick will have showers and 17. Halifax, Nova Scotia will be mostly sunny and 15. Charlottetown, PEI will have a few clouds and 16. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect periods of drizzle and a high of only 6 degrees tomorrow. One of the election promises Alberta Premier Jason Kenney campaigned on was red tape reduction for businesses. Tabor Warner MLA Grant Hunter, who's also the Associate Minister for Red Tape Reduction for our province, says without this kind of help, more businesses end up going to the States.
When you have businesses, and remember, capital is very fluid. It can go wherever it wants today. So they'll take a look at, say, going down to Texas, and they say, well, I can get all the regulatory burden done in 2 weeks to be able to to sink a well. Up here, it can take 8 months to 18 months. So where are they going to go? They're going to go down there because they can actually be making money in 2 weeks. Versus up here, they're going to have to wait up to 18 months to be able to make money.
Catch my full interview with Grant Hunter talking how the UCP will reduce red tape coming up after business news. Alberta's new agriculture minister says the province is deeply concerned about China's suspension of export permits for 2 Canadian pork producers. Devin Dreeshen says the feds must find a resolution to the diplomatic disputes and restore access to agriculture export markets. Dreeshen says the Alberta government is working with Ottawa to do so. The suspension comes amid strained relations between the two countries following last December's arrest in Vancouver of a Huawei executive. One of the affected pork producers, Olimol LP, has a major facility located in Red Deer, Alberta. A barn fire over the weekend in Bloom Norton, Manitoba killed close to 27,000 chickens. Fire officials received a call early Sunday, and when they arrived, they found the chicken barn engulfed in flames. The barn contained around 50,000 layers and pullets. Officials say they were able to save half the barn and half of the birds thanks to a firewall. Air Canada topped expectations with first quarter earnings of $345 million. It says the grounding of Boeing 737 MAX jets weighed on its results that should increase towards the end of the busy summer season. The airline says the ongoing dispute with China has hurt travel demand between the two countries. For the first quarter, the airline's operating revenue increased 9% to $4.45 billion. On an adjusted basis, the airline says it earned $17 million or 6 cents per diluted share. Analysts expected a loss of 18 cents per share. Hudson's Bay is looking at possibly selling off its Lord & Taylor business. In February, HBC announced it was shutting down Home Outfitters and it would be closing about 20 Saks Off Fifth stores in the United States. The Lord & Taylor chain has more than 40 stores in the U.S., along with an online business. Now, here's a look at today's markets. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the new Cor Van Ray YMCA opened over the weekend to much fanfare. The project, which began in 2011, makes Lethbridge YMCA the third largest in North America. Families now have access to the pool, fitness center, gym, and childcare centers. The official grand opening of the Cor Van Ray YMCA will be announced soon, but all of the facilities are now open. A major election promise from Jason Kenney and the UCP was about red tape reduction, a way to help Alberta businesses thrive and to attract more businesses to our province. Up next, I chat with the Associate Minister of Red Tape Reduction, MLA Grant Hunter, who has the details. But first, here's a look at what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News Community Calendar. The Troyanda Ukrainian Dance Club is presenting its annual year-end show, Vesna, a Ukrainian celebration of spring on Wednesday, May 8th at 7 p.m. at the NMAX Center. See amazing dances and brightly colored costumes from various regions of Ukraine. Plus, dances from the Philippines and Sri Lanka will also be featured with special guest performers, the Filipino Salto Group and Lethbridge Lankins. Tickets are $15 for adults, $12 for students and seniors, and $5 for kids 12 and under. Tickets can be purchased at the Ticket Center by calling 403-329-7328 or go to nmaxcenter.ca. Lethbridge Bike Fest is a full month of exciting and informative events encouraging you to get out and ride. Taking place Friday, May 17th from 2 to 4 p.m. is the Bike Mechanic Workshop at the Crossings Branch Public Library in West Lethbridge. Have the helpful technicians from Ascent Cycle get your bike into tip-top riding shape for summer. For more information about this and other Bike Fest events, visit yqlbikefest.ca. If you love the game of golf, get involved and be a volunteer at the second annual Lethbridge Paradise Canyon Open, a Mackenzie Tour PGA Tour Canada event, June 20th to the 23rd. There are a number of positions needed to be filled, and you'll gain the experience of being a part of a professional golf tournament. To learn more about volunteering for this event, visit lethbridgepcopen.ca or call Michelle at 403-327-5724. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
None of us like bureaucratic red tape, especially if you're running a business. Is it possible to cut some of that red tape? Well, we're going to find out here today as we talk with Tabor-Warner MLA Grant Hunter. He's Associate Minister of Red Tape Reduction, and he joins us in studio. Welcome to Bridge City News.
Great to be here.
Now, Grant, your personal experience as a small business owner, you know a little bit about when it comes to regulations and the hoops you have to jump through. What impact do excessive regulations really have on small business owners right here in our province?
Well, that's a good question, because I think what happens with small businesses, they get disproportionately affected by red tape, because small businesses don't have the same kind of economies of scale that large businesses do. So they can't just go and hire someone to fix the problem or to be able to fill out this extra form that the government's asking them to do. They have to do it themselves, and so we don't want small businesses to be driven out of being competitive, and that's what regulations do, is they just drive them out of the market. Small businesses, as you know, are some of the greatest producers of jobs in our province and in any sector.
With 75%, isn't it? Yeah, it's pretty close to that.
Yep.
Now, Premier Jason Kenney has said he's promised to cut red tape by 1/3. Where is he going to tackle first? The energy industry, the oil and gas sector?
Yeah, so there's lots of work that needs to be done there. Remember, the end goal of being able to get rid of red tape is jobs. So we've said specifically that jobs, the economy, pipelines, and then fighting for Alberta's interests, that's what our government's going to be focused on. And you can be sure that this red tape is going to be able to help that a lot.
Now, the business world really does have to have certain regulations in place to function properly. But we're talking about largely unnecessary regulations. Give me an example then, Grant, of some unnecessary regulations really tying business owners' hands.
Well, look, you know what? Regulations affect businesses, but it affects everybody. It affects, I'm going to give you an example actually that's not business, because we're going to fix a lot of the problems, not just for businesses. There was a municipality that needed to build a road, and they actually chose not to build that road, even though the road was going to facilitate getting farmers' product to market. So they decided not to build that road because of all the regulatory hoops that they'd have to jump through. Now, this is where we have problems. We have to be able to get past that. Municipalities, owners, business owners, they work together collaboratively to be able to build your society, and so that we can have good jobs, and people can be able to provide for their families.
Now, are you still planning the one in, one out rule? That is, the government adds one new regulation and then you take another one off the books?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So that's going to be stage 2. So once we actually get rid of 1/3 of the regulatory burden that are affecting our job creators, we're going to segue to that. And so governments in the future, we're going to set up I think a fairly good, robust program where people can say, if I have a regulation, then we do need regulations, right? We do have governments, and there's an important role for them. But in the future, we want to make sure that they are going to bring another regulation in that could be a good regulation. We want to make sure that they actually get rid of one as well.
Some of the business owners I've spoken to as well, Grant, say they can't stand the environmental regulations. It really ties their hands as well. Where are we at with that? What are you hearing from business owners?
Same thing. So you've got, there's a couple of big issues that face our business owners. Duty to consult is one of those things that is going to be a big, it's not a problem, but it's something that we have to be able to figure out. Saskatchewan's got a great model, by the way, of being able to work through the duty to consult issue. And then for everybody else, it seems to be environment and parks. We got a great environment and parks minister now, a good friend of mine, Jason Nixon, and he knows and understands where we need to be able to fix some of the problems in environment and parks so that these businesses can get back to work.
So some legislation will be passed as well soon to really outline some of the regulatory approval timelines. Now, what are the current timelines, and what should they really be at?
Well, it's different for lots of different issues. So I can't tell you exactly what is the timelines right now. But what I will say is this: when it takes 6 years or 8 years to be able to get a project like a SAGD project through, or an in situ project through, that's too long. Well, the pipeline's a classic example. Yeah, that's taken way too long.
Okay. How about the Trans Mountain Pipeline? I mean, that's more of a federal issue right now. And Jason Kenney was in Ottawa talking to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Bill C-69, you know, we're very much against it. Bill C-48. What are your thoughts on some of these bills right now? He calls it the anti-pipeline bill, 69.
Yeah, look, we don't think that it's going to help Alberta. We don't think it's going to help Canada. We're not sure why they're actually bringing these things forward, other than maybe some political reasons. So Jason is a phenomenal advocate for Albertans. He was doing that prior to being the premier. So you wait, he is going to be a fantastic advocate for us in our interests.
Well, what's interesting too is I used to work on Parliament Hill as a national parliamentary reporter, and I remember interviewing Jason Kenney a few times. He's held a number of portfolios in the Harper cabinet, so he knows the game they play in Ottawa. He knows all about it, so they can't pull the wool over his eyes here, right? Being as the Alberta Premier going to Ottawa, so he knows about the rules, regulations, and the legislation.
Sure, and he's well networked, he's well connected, he is a hard worker, you know, he's smart as a whip. You couldn't get a better advocate for Albertans.
Now, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business rated the province on red tape, and they actually gave us an F, Saskatchewan an A. Why the big difference?
And BC an A as well, just
right.
So you know.
Yeah.
Look, one of the problems is that I brought forward a private member's bill where we would just do a one-in, one-out red tape reduction. Talked to Minister Billis, who was the responsible NDP MLA at the time for that minister, and he said they're not interested. Coincidentally, a week later, they introduced a bill that added 100 pages of occupational health and safety legislation onto the backs of workers and employers. So this is why we're getting an F, because we didn't have a plan. Almost every jurisdiction throughout the world is trying to address this issue of regulatory burden. So red tape and regulatory burden are two different things. Red tape is just the redundancies of filling out this form, and it's the same thing as that form. Red tape reduction, it has to do with that, but it also has to do with reducing the regulatory burden. So the amount of regulations that you actually have to fill out.
Was it really the NDP, the last government that was in, that created a lot of these regulatory burdens for business owners?
Quite frankly...
or were they in place prior to the NDP coming in?
Quite frankly, we've had probably about 8 years where regulatory burden has been added on. Prior to that, we had this thing called the Alberta Advantage, and there were three things to the Alberta Advantage. First, there was lower marginal tax rates than other jurisdictions. We had no provincial sales tax, we had a flat tax, and so we were quite successful in that area. Sustainable government, and then lower regulatory burden. Those three things was what constituted the Alberta Advantage. And it was so successful that we were able to bring foreign investment into Alberta to the tune of having, for a 10-year period, more than Quebec and Ontario combined.
Wow.
It was fantastic. And so we had, we would have like 100,000 people moving in here each year because of the jobs and the opportunities. It was a good time to be an Albertan.
So I guess to get that Alberta Advantage back, it's all about job creation, isn't it?
Absolutely. And how do you do that? That's the real question. And so the NDP thought, and they came up with lots of ideas, but their ideas was always to subsidize and try to bring in people that way. The conservative approach is different. Our approach is that we're going to actually help people say, you know what, it actually makes sense business-wise to come into Alberta because we have lower marginal tax rate. We have a sustainable government. We have lower regulatory burdens. This is what businesses and international businesses are looking for.
Now you have this Red Tape Challenge website going to get public input. Share a bit with our viewers what that's all about.
So that is a temporary site. This was just to let people know we're serious about this. So far we're receiving some submissions, but we're actually going to put together the ministries. So the Associate Ministry of Red Tape Reduction is going to actually have a website on there. It's going to be very easy to navigate, where you can go on there and people from the province, people in the trenches that are dealing with this every day can go on there and say, you know what, I got a great idea, Minister, I'd like you to hear about it.
Now you're also going after public sector red tape as well, including municipality, schools, and hospitals. Tell me more about that.
You know, one of the things we've heard from our job creators is that you've got just a layering of red tape. You've got federal red tape, you've got provincial red tape, but you've also got municipal red tape as well. So we're going to sit down collaboratively with municipalities, and we're going to talk to them about the consequences of having this layering effect. And we're going to work with them to be able to help them also reduce their regulatory burden. Regulatory burden is one thing, but what it actually equates to is it equates to where you have longer timelines to be able to actually get projects approved. When you have businesses, and remember, capital is very fluid. It can go wherever it wants today. So they'll take a look at, say, going down to Texas, and they say, well, I can get all the regulatory burden done in 2 weeks to be able to to sink a well. Up here, it can take 8 months to 18 months.
Wow.
So where are they going to go? They're going to go down there because they can actually be making money in 2 weeks. Versus up here, they're going to have to wait up to 18 months to be able to make money. And that is always
Makes us a lot less competitive. Then,
very much so.
Okay, now I understand as well, an interesting idea is to modernize the New West Partnership to eliminate some of the barriers between the provinces related to the recognition of the trades and the occupational certification. Tell me a bit more about that too.
So right now, it's almost easier to trade south and north than it is to go east and west. We are in a confederation. Jason Kenney has talked about this extensively, where that has to change. We have partnerships that we need to start working with. Right to the east, right to the west of us, they've got very similar views as we do on lots of issues. Our economies are very similar in a lot of ways. We should be able to work together. There shouldn't be those kinds of trade barriers that we're seeing right now. And we're going to tackle that, and that's actually specifically in my purview.
Associate Minister of Red Tape Reduction, you've got quite the job ahead of you. How long is this process going to take?
Listen, it's an elephant, but how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
That's right. And you have another portfolio as well, something to do with finance?
So I have been assigned as a board member of the Treasury Board.
Oh, good.
So
how will that help?
Well, the Treasury Board is an important board to be able to make decisions on where the money goes.
That's right. That's wonderful. Grant Hunter, Tabor-Warner MLA and Associate Minister of Red Tape Reduction, thanks a lot for joining us here in studio today.
Great to be here. Thanks very much.
In almost every Canadian election, it seems right-of-centre candidates, especially faith-based ones, are put through the grinder because of their personal views on social issues. Now, why is this, and how should we handle it? Joining me now from Calgary is Jeremy Wong, former pastor and Alberta UCP candidate. Jeremy, you ran in the past provincial election here in Alberta as the UCP candidate, and the hotly contested Mountain View riding against some pretty big names too. NDP Cabinet Minister Kathleen Ganley, Alberta Liberal leader David Kahn, narrowly losing to the NDP. Now, you were given kind of a rough ride in the media because of some of your personal faith beliefs dredged up from past sermons and social media. Was this really a witch hunt from the mainstream media, or did voters also confront you as well on some of these issues?
Well, thank you for having me today. I really believe that it was mostly on the media, and it was an echo chamber on Twitter, and it did not reflect the real issues that I heard at the doors or from most of Albertans. We could see that people really cared about the jobs, economy, pipelines that were happening in our province, and we still won. The United Conservative Party won with a clear majority, with over 55% of the vote, and even in Mountain View, over 9,700 votes. So I believe that even at the doors, some people, maybe they had believed some of the negative campaigning that was happening, but most people I talked to, they understood that it was really just the media that was blowing it up, and most people that were willing to have a genuine conversation with me, they realized that our party was focused on sound policy, getting people back to work, and really not on these negative headlines.
Did you run into voters who voiced concerns that you were a pastor?
Well, I'm certainly not the first pastor that's run in politics. I mean, I look back at previous Alberta premiers, William Aberhart or Ernest Manning, or even the founder of the NDP in Saskatchewan, Tommy Douglas. Many of them were Christian leaders back in the day. And so I think there's a strong legacy and people still respect that. But I guess in this time and age, that has shifted a little bit. But for me, I really see that the pastoral experience really helped me be able to engage and listen and care for people. And I also feel that I have a multi-dimensional background. I have a master's in public policy. I've been involved with the party and the constituency level. I volunteered for the policy development process. So it was really a multi-dimensional background that I brought to the table.
Now, most political parties say they are big tent parties. Jason Kenney seemed to allow it. But I'm seeing a number of leaders directly saying that they would not welcome anyone with traditional social conservative values. Do you think this trend will continue?
Well, I hope that all political parties will be open to members of all backgrounds and religions. Religious freedom is something that is very important to preserve in Canada. And I'm concerned that any political party would discriminate based on any particular religion or beliefs. And I think it's important to build mutual understanding instead of this fear-mongering based on certain religions.
Jeremy, the UCP was accused of having racist tendencies as a person from a visible minority background. What was your experience like?
As a visible minority, as a Chinese Canadian, I felt that our party really supported diversity. We had a very diverse slate of candidates. And I really see that some of the racist comments were really taken really out of context that the NDP were accusing us of, especially in our riding. The candidate before me, Caitlin Ford, I know her personally, and I don't believe that any of those comments were true and that she was racist in any way. And I really think that that was just the NDP producing fake news.
Now, if a Christian wants to be a politician, how do you really present yourself without compromising and yet representing people with non-Christian views?
I think that politicians really need to represent the constituency that they're serving. There's a responsibility to listening to the concerns of the people, not just a specific voter base or demographic or a particular religious group. I understand that we live in a pluralistic society, and so no one should be using religions or belief or anything like that to use the coercive power of the state to force any beliefs on others. We need to build mutual respect and understanding. I actually consider myself a social libertarian. I believe in limited government, protecting the rights and freedoms of all Albertans, regardless of their beliefs, their gender, their race, their sexual orientation. In politics, I think that to be really serving the people well, there needs to be a commitment to truth, a commitment to mutual respect, a commitment to seeking the good of your neighbor, seeking the good of the community, and not really seeking power for its own sake, because that becomes selfish and self-serving.
Jeremy, let me ask you something. Let's say you were to have won the Alberta Mountain View riding in Calgary there, representing the UCP, and let's say you're pro-life, and let's say your constituents say, we want to see an abortion clinic right here in our community. So how would you justify, how would you move forward saying, I want to represent my constituency, yet you may be pro-life?
I believe it's important to respect the views of all people in my constituency. There is a clinic like that in our constituency, and I think it needs to foster mutual understanding. Oftentimes, issues can be very divisive, and people don't actually take the time to listen to the issues at hand. And so, actually listening to the concerns of the people instead of focusing on the things that divide us.
Now, where do Christian politicians tend to get themselves into trouble? What are they doing wrong, in your opinion?
I would say that we need to listen to that advice of being quick to listen and slow to speak, considering other people's points of view. Where politicians can oftentimes get in trouble, I think, is when there's unwillingness to listen to other perspectives. Usually the most controversial issues are because people are fearful of something or want to protect something or get angry about something. And unfortunately, I find that in the left, there has been an unfortunate occurrence of using these socially divisive issues for political gain instead of really caring for those who are vulnerable or hurting.
How about advice to faith-based politicians who use social media quite a bit, like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook? Some politicians have gotten into trouble in the past using social media.
It is unfortunate that there is this kind of scrutiny. I see that there is a lack of grace in politics and in media. There's really, the truth is that no one is perfect. And if you have to really clean out your whole history and be fearful of any sort of post or any sort of dialogue, then that's really unfortunate because things can become so mischaracterized, can become taken out of context. So I think that we need to understand that we're all human, that nobody is perfect, and that really it's human beings that are running for politics. And especially for young people, there needs to be wisdom on what to post and what to not post because it could really affect the future of what they're trying to engage in.
Now, you were criticized for a past sermon in which a Bible verse was read on wives being submissive to their husbands. Well, about 2/3 of Canadians say they adhere to the Christian faith to some degree, and the scripture is commonly read in many, many churches. So why was this such a huge issue?
Well, in the sermon you're referring to, it was actually a Mother's Day sermon about honoring the roles of mothers and women in our lives. I was discussing parenthood and marriage, and the text I was reading from was Ephesians 5, 21 to 33. And so in that passage, it talks about mutual submission to God, mutual submission to one another out of love and respect in marriage. And really, I think that it was completely a false portrayal of the sermon. It was they were calling me a misogynist based on taking a soundbite, a 1-minute soundbite out of a 40-minute sermon, taken completely out of context. And so, unfortunately, this was consistent with NDP's strategy in this election to use negative and false personal attacks against many UCP candidates. And when I reflect, I'm proud to be part of a party that actually advocates for the respect and protection of women. We have policies in our platform that protect women against domestic violence, against human trafficking. And so we have really great policies that are for advocating for women.
So how much does media coverage really influence voter preference? What are your thoughts?
I believe that media coverage can influence voter preference, but voters are becoming more and more skeptical of media because of biases and fake news. So I think that politicians, media, consumers of media, we all need to take time to discern what is true and what is false and really be committed to truth instead of reading this certain headline, but then when you actually read onwards, that headline is completely not true. And so we have to be more discerning and really digging deeper to see who we're voting for.
As a journalist myself, I always try to find both sides of every issue, every story. And I've been in the industry now for just over 30 years. But how often do you find with mainstream media that often only one side of a story is being told?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And unfortunately, there's more and more bias in media and the quality of reporting. We need to really go back to the facts and do our research.
So how often should we respond as people of faith? Should we remain silent, or is it okay to share our viewpoint on many of these contentious issues?
I believe we need to use wisdom in what we share. We need to be respectful, and we can be vocal, but realize that there's a plurality of views, and we can share in a way that creates dialogue and creates a conversation rather than division, because I think that there's more things that we could actually agree upon than disagree.
Now, have you decided yet whether or not you'll take another shot at politics in the future at some point?
Well, it was an incredible experience. I'm very thankful for all the people I met at the doors, thousands of people, my volunteer team. So I remain committed and passionate about politics, but I have to see what opportunities come in the future, and I would be excited if the opportunity arose.
So, Jeremy, what was the biggest thing you learned on this journey, this political journey here?
The biggest thing I learned was probably that we're all neighbors. We're all Calgarians or Edmontonians or Albertans. And really, at the end of the day, no matter who we voted for, no matter what lawn sign we put on our lawns during the election period, we're all in it together. We're all fellow citizens really seeking the good of this province. So at the end of the day, it's really how do we have dialogue? How do we have mutual respect, commitment to truth, and really seek the good of this province together?
What do you think has to change for Edmonton to become a little more Tory blue? It's pretty orange right now, while the rest of the province is a nice shade of blue.
I think that with time, our whole province will see what the policies and what the governance of the UCP will look like. And I honestly believe that this positive governance will win more voters in the next election.
And what about Jason Kenney approaching Justin Trudeau, talking about Alberta secession because of how irate he is right now with Bill C-69, the anti-pipeline bill, and as well with Bill C-48? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I can see the frustration of Albertans in being part of Canada right now with the issues on our natural resources and getting our oil and gas to market. But I do believe that Albertans are committed to Canada and are proud to be Canadian. And so I think that we can, even though we have divisive issues, that we can work together for a better Alberta and a better Canada.
Jeremy Wong, former pastor and Alberta UCP candidate, thanks a lot for joining me today from Calgary.
Thanks for having me.
In behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and have a great night.